you. Welcome. The Hats Hits IG Live special as we talk to you after round one of the playoffs. 83 games in the books. 84 if you count the one from Thursday night. You do count the one from Thursday night. There's still a few games to be played on Thursday. If you're watching on IG or you're watching on Cova Sports TV on YouTube or Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Twitter, IG, all the different platforms, we thank you and encourage you to interact with us as we take you through my takeaways from Friday night's high school football action as we turn the calendar to Saturday, November 15th, and get you set for round number two, numero dos. And we'll take them in order of what the takeaways were that I tweeted out. I'll do 5 after every Friday night of action. It might be the final one. I'm not sure I'll do one after the semifinals, but I'm sure we'll do different shows and various things to the podcast and all that good stuff. But let's get it started with the number one takeaway. And that was that the number 6 seeds were live across the board. Smithfield got it started off on Thursday night, beating War Hill at Warner and Williamsburg 30-22. Beat them twice this year. Then it carried over on Friday with the likes of Hopewell knocking off New Kent. Sort of saw that coming. Hopewell's won championships before. And by the way, if you've seen that guy, Trevion Henderson from the New England Patriots, scored 3 touchdowns on Thursday night. He came out of Hopewell. They've won championships under Ricky Irby. They got a lineman going to OU. And Tino Richardson, not a shock they beat New Kent from the Bay Rivers. Southampton knocking off a 10-0 Central Lunenburg, scoring 44 is a surprise. Even though 2 years ago they beat them in the playoffs, 44 points. Mighty good. They got a quarterback by the name of Zayden Pope. If you're not familiar with Zayden Pope, he's one of the best QBs in all of Virginia at any level. Was All-State last year, was the Player of the Year in the region last year. He's a guy that can get hot, and I'm still scratching in my head how they lost as big as they did to Colonial Heights, but here they are in the region semis getting ready to take off Pocosin on the road. Big win to knock off a 10-0 team and keep that season going for the Southampton Indians. And then the other two that won, Lebanon beating Virginia High, they were one of 4 teams that I'll touch on that actually avenged regular season losses to a team that beat them. And Virginia High beat them pretty good, in fact. Beat them by a wide margin when they played earlier this year. Lebanon gets it done. They got a quarterback in Mike Reese going to UVA Wise. They knew what they were capable of. They didn't finish up strong, but they got the rematch they wanted, and they took advantage of it, beating the Bearcats, who thumped them 42-6 just 11 days ago. They got the offense going this time and won 38-34. So they had that 3-game losing streak, lost to Union Grand, Virginia High. Here they are in the region semis. Good for that program, Hunter Norris's Pioneers. And then the last one, Liberty Christian, maybe the game of the night, 14-12 at Broadway. The Gobblers tried to gobble up the 2-time defending state champs. Couldn't do it, 14-12. This is a team in Broadway that scored 83 points last week against Harrisonburg. The LCA defense held firm, and now they go to Wilson Memorial next week, which is going to be a tough game. So what did we learn? As we say hi to Jay Lee out there. What did we learn? We learned that the number 6 seeds can make noise in the playoffs. We've seen it the last couple of years. A 6-3 upset is more common than a 1 falling to an 8 or a 7 knocking off a 2. It can happen, and I think 6 is the right number for the playoffs as opposed to 8, which we'll get to in a moment. 4 years ago was hard to swallow and digest when you have teams going 9-1, 8-2, missing the playoffs. Didn't love that at all. But that's number one. Outside of that, though, it was total chalk on this night. Not a lot of excitement, more yawns and bore. Your Class 6s, 5 and 1s didn't have any surprises. And I don't consider a 5 beating a 4 surprise. I'm sorry, I know it happened across the board. Not big surprises. But you had a few in Classes 4, 3, and 2. Mild surprises, not major. But I mentioned the 4 teams that avenged losses. You had it. Lebanon beating Virginia High, lost to them earlier this year. You had William Byrd beat Bassett, lost to them this year. You had Salem avenge its loss to Bayside, and Westfield handled Washington Liberty, who they lost to by a whisker, put a big number up on the board with 56, I think it was, on the Generals. Get to number 2 now in the takeaways. Playoffs, you kidding me? Number 2, Craig County Rockets. Want to give them some love. Class 1 out there, small school. We've got like 240 kids in the entire school. We'll have a story on this on VirginiaPreps.com because my guy Robert Anderson was there, the VHSL Hall of Famer. They had lost their 4 playoff games ever They were jubilant. They stormed the field. They celebrated like it was they won the Super Bowl because it meant something to those kids. And that's what high school football is all about, to see that happen for them. Jimmy Fisher got there. He told people they had not even built a weight room when he got there. And here they are at Craig County getting it done, 27-0 over Bath County, who last year was one of the surprises in the state. Fifth time was the charm. Now they get to host Grayson, the defending region champs, and the team that lost in the Class 1 championship game to Essex last year. Big step up. But this is a program now that can move forward with the returnees they have, and they got to feel like they can make a jump upward. So this is a good win for them. Big moment for that program. They've been knocking on the door to finally do this, and here they are. They were not on the radar to start the year, and it's a big moment for them. Number 3, also want to give big ups to David Porter and Bethel. And the reason I do is because, I know Tyrell Grant Jr., the Nansemond River quarterback, did not play due to injury. He was held out, the Syracuse commit. But Bethel had lost literally its last 9 playoff games. Nine playoff games. They finally get a postseason win, does Bethel. Hadn't done it since 2008 when they beat Western Branch. All you Bruins out there, and Justin Ned called this, by the way, last week on the show. So props to Justin out there, former PG for Bethel. I think is now the JV hoops coach. But those kids that play for Bethel, some of them weren't even born back in 2008 when they beat Western Branch 21-7 in Chesapeake. They lost to Oscar Smith, Phoebus, Oscar Smith, Western Branch by 2, Ocean Lakes, Indian River, Kings Fork, Nansemond River. Finally got it done. Amari Pryor, Ferrari Amari's been running wild all year long, 2,000-plus yards, headed to Hampton U. The quarterback's making plays at Alex Lewis. Derek Fisher had a pick 6 tonight, the UVA commit, Michael's cousin, Dwight's nephew. And then they've also got receivers like Antonio Cummings and Casey Campbell who have been making plays throughout the year. So now Bethel, another step up in competition. You win on the road in Suffolk. Now you got to take on the top-seeded Bulldogs at Kings Fork. And I know everybody knows the team in the region that scored 64 tonight. Maury is the team, 2-time defending state champs. This is a turn-the-corner moment for Bethel, which had put up 42 points a game, allowed only like 15 a contest. And you say, how are they just 6-4? They gave a game away. They felt against Phoebus. They gave one away close to Churchland, outgained Warwick and lost. And all right, didn't beat Hampton in a back-and-forth game. This can help those returnees, and the seniors feel like they accomplished one of the goals on their checklist. I know they have more. Going to be hard to knock off some other checks on the list. Good night for Bethel. I think they got as important a win, a team that needed a playoff win as much as any program out there. When you lose 9 in a row, it's a lot in a row. Number 4 on the Hats Hits takeaways, let's give some acknowledgement to the Concord District. I hear all the time that we play in the best district in the state, whether that's the Central District in Richmond, or it's the Commonwealth District in Fredericksburg, or it's the Southeastern District in the 757, used to be the PD for many years, or it's the Seminole District out there in Lynchburg. My district, our district is the best. Everyone wants to beat their chest about they have the best district. The Concord District in Region 6D and the Liberty District, those 2 districts make up that entire region. And they seeded their tournament, their playoffs, 1 through 4, the whole bracket. And the Concord swept the Liberty. No shock that Centerville, the 1 seed, won its playoff game against George Marshall. No shock that Westfield beat Washington Liberty. I know they lost them this year by 1, but WL's banged up, and Westfield's got more all-district guys, probably more talent. On the road, though, went Madison to beat Langley. Had to score a lot of points to do it. I think it was 42-32. And on the road, went again South Lakes, 2-time defending basketball state champs, no more as a basketball school, to beat Yorktown, who was playing a lot better. South Lakes hit a little bit of a rocky patch midseason, and they beat Yorktown to start the season off. The Concord, do a little history lesson here. With those members like Westfield and Centerville and Madison, this guarantees the Concord's going to have someone in the state semis because they're left with all 4 teams. Now, they might have to play Oscar Smith out of Region 6A in the state semis. They probably get to host them, though, from what I see on the bracket. And here's the other part. They've been to the state championship game, one of their teams. This is including Oakton and Chantilly and Robinson when it was in the Concord. Last 25 years, since the century turned to the 2000s, they've been there 17 times in 25 years. And all those schools I mentioned, Centerville, Madison, Westfield, Oakton, Robinson, they've all gone to the championship game. They all have physical football players. They all have big linemen. They all run to the football. They all tackle well. They're fundamentally sound. They're well-schooled. They win. They get to the championship game. They don't always win the championship, but if they do it this year, it'll be the 18th time in 26 years. Their teams are prepped and they're battle-tested, and they can say after this night when they sweep the Liberty, they play as good a brand of football as just about anybody in Virginia. So this is a big night for them. Other districts in the state might not be able to have that same type of bragging rights. For this particular Friday night in the playoffs, the Concord can say, we're as good as anybody around. They can say that, and it's hard to dispute that or argue with them given the results. The proof is in the pudding. I could use some pudding right now. And number 5, blowouts were the theme of the night. You can tell I'm not as enthused. I'm not as juiced up. And look, the data and the numbers will tell you this, folks. These first-round playoff games, I don't want to say they're irrelevant and unnecessary, a bore, but listen to these numbers. There were 83 playoff games, all right? 83 of them. 36 of them were won by running clock margins. That's almost half of them were 5 touchdowns or more, where you're yawning your way through, where you're going to fall asleep. Only 5 of the 83 games, just 5 of them, only 5, folks, were decided by 7 points or less. We're talking like less than 7, just 6% of the games were decided by 7 points or less. And when you go across the board, 5 of the 83 games, we're talking Class 6. They only had 2 games out of 14 decided by a touchdown or fewer. Class 5 had none. And I hear all the time how great Class 5 is and it's better. Maybe we'll get better games in round 2. None. Class 4 out of 12, none. Class 3 out of your 16 games, just 1 decided by 7 points or less. Class 2, 2 of your 13 games. Class 1, none of your 14 games decided by 1 score. None of them. Not a single one. You're running clocks. You had 4 of them in Class 6. You had 3 in Class 5. You had 8 in Class 4. You had 8 in Class 3. You had 6 in Class 2. You had 7 in Class 1. I mean, get these games over with. I said last week I was not going to go on a big rant about this, but again, after tonight's results, no 7s and 8s advancing, and you did have 6 5 seeds. You did have 6 seeds, I think it was, or 5 6 seeds win. Number 6 seeds wins. But 72 of your 84 games, the better seeds won. And I'm not saying we got to have upsets galore. This is the March Madness NCAA basketball tournament. I'm not saying it has to be that. But I do think after we look at this a little harder, that unless you're in a region like Region 6B or certain regions where you have, more than X amount of schools, you might need to do what 6A is doing and what 5D is doing and what 2B is doing, where they give their 1 and 2 seeds buys and you play 3 versus 6 and you play 4 versus 5. These 7 and 8 seeds with below 500 records, I mean, for the most part, they're pretty much a waste of time. I'm sorry if that hurts feelings, but let's just be honest here. Let's get with the program. And we'll see if there's any rest versus rust. We talk about this in the Major League Baseball playoffs when teams had to sit out a while and it's a routine thing. You give a football team 2 weeks off. I'm sure with those that have injuries, Oscar Smith and Thomas Dale probably don't mind it a ton. And Strasburg and Buckingham don't mind it a ton. And Stonebridge and Riverbend are okay with it. And we'll get them back to their routine and their regimen. And those that have those buys will adjust accordingly. And Loudoun Valley and Loudoun County in 4C. I don't want to leave out 4C, by the way. They'll adjust to get ready for their games that they got with Heritage, Leesburg, and Woodgrove. But these games did not produce much drama. Let's hope and pray that round 2 brings us more. And let's look at some of the games. We'll put up the brackets on the screens. We'll go from the lower level on up, and I'll talk you through it for those that don't see it on IG. If you're watching on Cova Sports TV or the X, the Twitter here, we'll count you through them here. You see 1C at the moment. 1D, Eastside, Honaker, Rye Cove, Chilhowie. Rye Cove, Chilhowie was a pretty good game the first go-around. That's worth seeing. Honaker can score points, so even if they can't stop Eastside, they should be fun to watch with Parker Lowe, who had 32 completions last week, one of the best freshman QBs in the state. There's a lot of good ones. I saw one up close and personal tonight with Lord Malik Carew of Indian River. You'll see them in a second. You got Giles and George Wythe. You got Grayson County and Craig County. Some decent storylines there. I think one of those games, maybe not both, but one of those two games will be decided by 7 points or less. I think they'll be all right there in Class 1. I'm okay with that. Region 1B, Alta Vista, Buffalo Gap, Riverhead, Sussex Central. I think Sussex Central Riverhead has the makings to be a really competitive ball game. Riverhead's running game. Do the Gladiators have enough on defense to stop what Sussex Central presents on offense? That's a big question there. Now, Alta Vista Buffalo Gap was a competitive battle last year. I'm not sure Buffalo Gap has the defense and special teams to stop them. Alta Vista special teams could be a big deal there. Forfeits in Region 1A with Rappahannock and Essex moving on. Now, remember, Northumberland put up a boatload of points the last time they played against Essex. That was a good ball game, competitive ball game. In fact, Tyreek Lundy torched the Essex defense. Problem was they didn't get enough stops, and Northumberland lost that game 62-42. I don't think it'll be as high scoring this go round. We shall see. Rappahannock, Northampton, I think Rappahannock takes that pretty easily. Class 2, look at the semis there. Region D, we'll wait to see if it's Graham Union. I think it will be. Lebanon and Ridgeview. You got in 2C, Glenver, Radford. No Brody Doyot, who was out. I think he'll be back. Radford was a nemesis in the past of Glenver. I don't think Glenver will get tested until they see Gretna in the region final, which I do anticipate in 2C. 2B, you have the teams with the byes back in action with Strasburg and Buckingham. Remember, Strasburg Central Woodstock was a good, close contest to close out the regular season. I think it will be interesting to see if Strasburg is a little rusty, if they've made some corrections, and the Central Woodstock is ready to go knock them off there. I did not expect Stuart Strath to beat Madison as easily as they did. Didn't see that coming. Now you get to some good football here. Some really, all right, you hunker down here. I mean, Graham and Union, by the way, could be an epic game in a rematch. But Armstrong TJ, it's a rematch of earlier in the season. Armstrong put up 49, but I'm telling you, folks, TJ made a quarterback switch. This is a different team than what they were late August, early September. Their defense has been playing great lately. They held Hermitage down. And I'm really curious to see if the TJ defense will be able to slow Armstrong's machine on offense. This has the makings to be the winner of that game is going to feel like it's going to play for a state championship in Class 2. No disrespect to Poquoson, who I do think will get by Southampton. I think Southampton will have a hard time moving it on that Poquoson defense, especially the defensive line there. But the winner of that Armstrong TJ game has to feel like they're going to be playing out in Salem for the state title. Now, whether it's against Graham, Glenver, Union, fill in the blank, we shall see. But they got to feel like they're going to get there. That's going to be a war with those two. They know each other quite well, and they're pretty evenly matched in terms of athleticism, although Armstrong has been the much more consistent, much more productive team, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Magna Vista, Carroll County, William Burr, Botetourt. William Burr, Botetourt, they've played some great games in the past here. You know, Botetourt hit that wall earlier. Are they ready to take out William Byrd and exercise some demons on that front? This will be really fascinating to watch, to see what Jamie Harless and company try to dial up here, to see if they can get Mr. Lutz off his game, throwing it for Byrd. That's the big thing there to watch, is if Botetourt's defense can step forward. I think Botetourt can move the ball and run it on Byrd and score. I'm just wondering about the Botetourt defense in that spot. We're going to find out how well they tackle in that game, and if their line of scrimmage can impose its will at all. In 3C, Liberty Christian Wilson Memorial. You know, Liberty Christian didn't put up a whole lot of points. We'll see if the Wilson Memorial defense is going to put up as big a test, but I think we're going to see that game I saw on Halloween. I think we're going to get Heritage Lynchburg and we're going to get Liberty Christian. And the winner of that in the region final is probably your favorite to claim the Class 3 championship. I know Magna Vista, with Ethan Dukes going over 1,000, by the way, and that crew, they lost that close one to GW Danville, but they got to like their chances. 3B, Brentsville all over James Monroe. Skyline Culpeper was not as big a night for Mr. Burks. Skyline got by, but Culpeper, I'm starting to wonder if they just beat Caroline to close out the regular season. Culpeper's starting to sneak up here and look like they are on a collision course with Kettle Run, and that might be a more competitive game, although Kettle Run is, to me, the definite team. 3A, I felt it was Lake Taylor's region. I haven't been given any reason to think otherwise. The Norcom defense is stout. I don't know if they have enough offensive firepower to hang with Lake Taylor, who I think can break off more big plays. Hopewell Petersburg, it's a great rivalry for many, many years. Basketball. I don't know that that game is going to be an epic instant classic. Do think it'll be pretty close, though. And Hopewell has to like its chances to reverse the outcome. We mentioned about the 4 reversed outcomes with Westfield, Williamsburg, Salem, and Lebanon reversing their outcomes from earlier in the season. Hopewell was in that game with Petersburg, so they got to feel like they have a decent shot there. Now we get to the real core of some really fun second-round games. GW Danville, Sharando. If both offenses come to play, that's a game that can be played in the high 30s or 40s. Jefferson Forest awaits the winner of Hanley Liberty Bilton on Saturday, just like in 4A. Hampton awaits the Phoebus Churchland winner. Might get a Hampton Phoebus second-round game. Lafayette Smithfield. Smithfield, you had your moment in the sun. I'm sorry, I don't see you taking down Lafayette, not in this second-round game. 4B, now this is where it's at, folks. Dinwiddie, Verina, Huguenot, Louisa. Those are the top 4 ranked teams most of the year in Class 4. And you're talking about the 4 highest power ratings. Those are state semifinal, state championship caliber games in the second round of the regions. Dinwiddie's offense, when they lost Harry Dalton, a lot of people wondered how they would do. And Zion Boisseau has just been running that thing with precision and with ease. And they really put it on a Hanover team that gave Highland Springs a scare last week. And the thing that got me, too, was Hanover had to go for it on 4th down 9 times in their game tonight. Didn't get much going at all when it came to stopping the Dinwiddie offense. I mean, Dinwiddie was 8 of 12 on 3rd down. They actually put him in 3rd down 12 times. But that Verina defensive line, that's the thing here in this game. Can Dinwiddie's offensive line be able to block Bull Richardson and that crew and Braylon Hood at linebacker and deal with those guys they have in their defensive front that they're going to move around and isolate? I do wonder, Dinwiddie lost that game last year, how their wide receiver is going to do in this game, and if Verina can match them for full 48 minutes, that game's going to be there's a lot of fascinating angles and subplots and storylines of that game. And then Huguenot, Louisa, they're both going to go on Saturday next week. I mean, that's not even your appetizer game. That game can be as good, if not better. And the way Huguenot is scoring here, Louisa's defense, now it played well against Cortland, 42-7, but I'm curious to see if they can try to make Huguenot one-dimensional. Do you really bite down on the runs and didn't dare Coach Scott's son at quarterback to try to beat you over top? Now, they have Evion Lewis, who's going to want to show he's a 5-star, not a 4-star. And he's one of the best receivers all around, 2,000-plus yards in his career. Huguenot's defense has been tackling people pretty well. They held Manchester to single-digit points. Now you got to tackle Savion Hyder, the 5-star going to Michigan. This is a different animal. This is a different beast to try to tackle. And if you focus too much on him, Dajier Carter on the outside can burn you. He can take a simple hitch or a curl, a quick screen, and he can house it. So that game has the makings to be an even higher scoring game than the Dinwiddie-Verina game. And Dinwiddie-Verina, if you remember, just last year in the playoffs, that game was a final score of 41-27. Dinwiddie had the 70-35 game with King George in the second round. And the year before that, Dinwiddie ended up losing to King George 46-29, and then King George beat Verina. But I think it was 2022 you got to go back to where it was the really unbelievable game. Yeah, 2022, Dinwiddie beat King George 47-41 in overtime. There's going to be a game in the 40s that requires, I think, more than 48 minutes, and 4B is the region where it's probably at. That's probably the region where it's going to be. Just no shock in my opinion if that happens there. I see it, Charles King out there. We're going to shock the world. You guys winning the region is not a big shock to me. I think you got a great chance to beat Huguenot. I got those two games are total coin flips. I mean, I can go back and forth. That could spend an hour on those two games, and it would be more interesting to people in the 804 and Central Virginia than it would be around the whole state. But those two games, I mean, That's as good as it gets. They are really, really compelling second round games, and I'm glad we get them. And I think those teams are all kind of playing, close to their peak. I do want to see if the Dinwiddie defense, they did give up a lot of yardage to Hanover. When you get a big lead, though, it's 42-14 at the break, and you put in some subs, looking at some of the numbers, that can be a little deceiving. So I don't want to make too much of that. 4C for a moment, Loudoun County, Loudoun Valley, you're going to get chapter 2 of that, I think. Although Woodgrove is much more capable, that freshman quarterback, he's a ball player. Colton out there, he can throw it. Much more capable of scaring Loudoun Valley and knocking them off than I would say Heritage Leesburg is of knocking Loco off in 4C. Over to 5 and then 6, and then we'll sign this off. John Champ Stonebridge, Potomac Falls Riverbend. Again, it's just that'll feel a little bit like we just did with 4C. Let's move forward to actually more than that. Stonebridge and Riverbend. That to me is your best region final should we get it. That's the region championship game I want to see the most, whether it be in person or on film or on a screen. That's the one I'm looking forward to potentially seeing. I think that has the makings to be a great battle. Remember last year Riverbend took Stonebridge out and then lost to Briarwoods. Briarwoods is done now. They lost to John Champ. That's going to be a lot of fun should we get it, which I think we will. 5C, PH Roanoke Hermitage, William Fleming, Highland Springs. The first 1 seed to go out, it depends on the timing of it, but PH Roanoke, although they beat Franklin County really handily, I'm wondering if Hermitage goes out there and takes them out. I think that's got the makings. And by the way, Antoine Buddy Richardson with his 9th interception, Buddy Richardson with his 9th INT on defense this year for the Springers. They were down, I believe, at halftime in that game to Glenn Allen, who threw some picks and without their starting quarterback. Highland Springs cannot be flat for a half against William Fleming, even at home, because if they're flat, they might be down a couple of scores. And they could come up short against a Fleming team that is chomping at the bit to show that they are made of what they need to be made of to go on the road and beat a program with its reputation that Highland Springs has. So I would not sleep on Fleming Highland Springs. I think their offense is a little bit more put together and smoothed out than you're expecting. And then some teams you've seen lately. I know you've seen some good football, no doubt about it. Lauren Johnson plays a rugged schedule every year. His kids, they execute. They should be ready. But I think Fleming's a little more dangerous than people think in that game. That game, it would not surprise me if it's a one-score down on the wire game. And Highland Springs knows how to react to win those games. So, again, not going to pick Fleming right now, but I would tell you it's not as big a shock to the system as some would say it is. Kings Fork, Bethel, Warwick, Maury. Does feel inevitable that we're going to get Maury and Kings Fork this time in Suffolk, not at Powhatan Field in Norfolk. The Peninsula District trying to show its strength. Warwick has the defense. Bethel has the offense. Question is, do you have both, and can you play a mistake-free game, which is what it's going to take to beat those two heavyweights that are now 10-1, and they've played outside competition outside the state and won. Kings Fork beating Wise this year. Maury beating Bishop McNamara in Triple OT, though they did have the one blemish early on to Cardinal Gibbons. So, yeah, and Tayshawn Branch is starting to step it up. Kings Fork is making plays, one-handed catch by Z Win, and Isaiah Gilliam's been running really well for them lately. So, yeah, Kings Fork Maury, that's a region championship that's not far below in terms of excitement and intrigue is that Riverbend Stonebridge and has the chance to be a classic. So Kings Fork has gotten it together. They had that one loss to Oscar Smith, but I like they seem to be ascending in a way here with their play. And Maury has not been on the decline whatsoever. With their sophomore quarterback and Damo Everett leading the way, our most recent Chicho's Pizza Player of the Week in the 757. Green Run Salem, Indian River Cox. This is opportunity time. Opportunity for Mark Hall after he takes out Bayside to go beat his old school. He's come close, regular season and playoffs. You go knock out Green Run. That's a signature win if you can pull that off. Without the starting quarterback, I think they just completed one pass on the night, which was Jack Strother, I think, on a TD pass. May have been to Caden Drenning. They've had to backup quarterback. Jason Harden at running back, he woke Green Run up in the second half of that game the last time they played. Green Run, though, with Charles Jackson, he's a difference maker. And I think Green Run, they might have some struggles in that game because Salem up front matches up better with Green Run than a lot of the Beach teams do. But when push comes to shove, Stallions for 48 minutes, they're hard to take down. You have to have all three faces clicking. And Indian River Cox, I think as great as Cox has been playing defensively, and Tyree Jeffries has been balling out, Cox gets that playoff win. They get the monkey off their back after losing the last couple years as a higher seed to Deep Creek and to Kempsville. Now you're in maybe an athletic disadvantage against Indian River with that freshman quarterback who's slinging it in Lord Malik Haru. I'm curious to see what wrinkles Tyler Noe and his staff come up with, especially on defense, but even more so on offense, to see if they can make Indian River do some things differently and have to react and adjust. But I like Indian River a lot in that game. I really do. I think Cox is a nice story to recover from the 2-2 sluggish start to be on this great run that they're on. I give Indian River the nod in that one. And an Indian River Green Run game, they've had some tough battles the last 2 years. That would be your region final on Thanksgiving weekend in Virginia Beach. And I still say Green Run is the favorite. But Indian River played one of its crispest games. And if they reduce the penalties, they could come out of that region. They really could as a 3 seed. They really have a chance. They do. I know Lil Burr out there saying the Stallions. Listen, the Stallions, they've got weapons galore, and their defense will make things much more challenging should they get to that region matchup in the finals against Indian River. But I do think Green Run just they find a way. They really do. Special teams has been stepping up. Devin Miller's made some plays this year. We've seen Chadney Cross. I think Corvin Watson and Cam Johnson supplying that pass rush. You got to get a pass rush on Haru. And that's something Cox is going to need. And should they advance, Green Run or Salem would need. Salem's got one of the better linebackers around, Marcus McCoy. Charles King out there saying Carolina actually did a decent job tonight on slowing my little cousin Savion down, but he got loose a little bit in the second half. Yeah, he's going to do that. And the thing about that, Louisa, Will Patrick and them do such a nice job, and you know this, Charles, is they'll mix in other backs. So Savion isn't your exclusive ball carrier. People think he just runs the ball 40 times a game. It's not how it works. If you watch Louisa play, they do some real creative things offensively. And they give him breathers when he needs to, and then they put him in situations that make it tough for other teams to stop. No doubt about it. Let's go over to Class 6 now before we bid adieu on this night. I'll give you a quick hitter thought on my game of the week in college football and the NFL for you out there. I misspelled Centerville. I apologize for you out there in the second round. We know it's Centreville. And Madison. Look, Madison's offense, it can maybe match Centerville here. And I do worry about Centerville's defense. They had a big 42-7 lead on George Marshall, and then Marshall made it close in the fourth quarter, put a little scare in him with all his points. Don't do that in the fourth quarter here. I know Centerville's got some youngsters on defense, sophomores and juniors. Jordan Simpson at wide receiver has been balling out. And we know about Will Shields as the offensive player here in the Concord District, the quarterback who's headed to Albany. And they got guys galore on offense that are making plays for them, and Coach John Shields here. The real X factor in that game is going to be, for me, the running backs, because Matthew Weiler, well, he's not Dom Nicely for Madison. He can get some big plays on that Centerville defense, and I want to see what Luke Salvosa and that Madison defense do this time around. What screws have been tightened, what tweaks have been made by Coach Counts and his staff over there at Madison as they try to not only get more pass rush and pressure on the QB and Will Shields, but see if they can take Cardin Stover out of the equation when it comes to running the football, over 1,000 yards on the year here for Centerville to be just a full throttle offense. Even their loss they had against Forest Park, they've been putting up points in bunches. I don't think Westville will have much problem with South Lakes. I think South Lakes got its big win. They got the pass breakup on 3rd and goal into the game to keep Yorktown from having a chance to tie it or win it. I think Westfield cruises there, and they're just await the Centerville-Madison war, the winner of that war. 6C Occoquan region. I would have said West Springfield Lake Braddock rematch is coming, but South County, pay attention to them. Their defense, they put the clamps on Falls Church, and you say, well, they're not a team that wins a lot in the playoffs, but they won 7 games. They had a running back go for like 1,600 yards this year, and Trevion Campbell, the wide receiver, player of the year in that district, junior quarterback's been stepping up. SoCo's found its groove. They were 1-2 to start the year, lost a close one in OT to West Springfield, and here they are. They've beaten Lake Braddock before, so Lake Braddock wants a little revenge, a little payback, and Peyton Holmes had to get the knee surgery. He's out for the year running the football for Lake Braddock. They're a little more one-dimensional. Now Ty Jackson can make plays with his feet. The Norfolk State commit, behold the green and gold. The trigger man for Lake Braddock, headed to play for Michael Vick next year. I think Lake Braddock, though, is probably going to get the nod in that game. That game is a little trickier to call, though, than some others. I think West Springfield will have no problem with Fairfax. I think they have more ways to score. Scotty Lewis at quarterback, my guy, Boobie Wickham running the football, having a great year. And Javon Austin tonight, 3 touchdowns for him. He's up to 14 for the year at wide receiver. He's one of the more unheralded receivers in the entire state who's been balling out. And your last 2 regions here before I get to the college and pro moment here of the show, Colonial Forge Woodbridge. Woo! That's a great game. And North Stafford Battlefield. Woo! That's a great game. North Stafford Battlefield. I watched some of this on NFHS start of the year. 1-point game. Battlefield came storming back. Keaton Ramey, the Stony Brook commit, makes a touchdown catch into the game, and they stun North Stafford. Battlefield's offense has been a little up and down, and that's even been post the injury to Callum O'Shea where Ethan Stowell's come in. I think their running game has been a little bit off track at times too. North Stafford just completely took apart Independence's defense. Kanaz Sullivan on the outside. He's a game breaker. I'm getting the sneaky hunch that North Stafford takes Battlefield out. And Colonial Forge Woodbridge, Colonial Forge's defense, they pitched a shutout of Garfield, which is not easy to do. The thing I want to see here is, can Colonial Forge's secondary, which has some playmakers back there now, Darion Majid and Tayshawn Jones, some of these guys out there, now you got a different challenge in front of you because this Woodbridge passing attack, which has just been putting up yards and points all year long in a big way, can you disguise some things coverage-wise and make life tough on Caleb Tucker, who's completing close to 70% of his passes for nearly 3,000 yards. I think he went over 40 touchdown passes on the year. His ratio was 38-3 coming into Friday night. He's got 3 really good receivers. That's a game that, Colonial Forge might have to pull out the fire to advance. But that's going to be a real heck of a game. I did not know that Carter did not play. Interesting to know that. Hopefully he is going to be available moving forward. They should need him in a big way against Huguenot. Did not know that, the Rutgers commit. He needs to be out there and really in all 3 phases, but both ways, because somebody's going to check Mr. Lewis for Huguenot at wide receiver, one of the best juniors in the country. So, yeah, they're going to need him in that game. If he's not at full strength or available, that really changes up that one. Charles, I'm thinking long and hard about next Saturday. If I don't make it in person, which I want to do to the jungle, I might have to move my podcast up early since y'all play at 1 o'clock. And, of course, I can't clone myself and be at Dinwiddie Verona at 1:30 either. See what game my man Daniel Lewis is going to do. But I like to be at both those games. Those are 2 fantastic games. They should have played them in the same venue and had them back-to-back. That would have been nice for everybody, but they're not going to do that. And lastly, here's 6A. While we have a moment, LC Bird Oscar Smith, Manchester Thomas Dale. Look, I would have told you before last week that Manchester beats Thomas Dale by 2 touchdowns minimum. Yeah, I said that. But after what Lansdowne did, and a tip of the hat to Robert Jackson, if that is indeed his final game as a coach, what a wonderful coaching career he had at 4 different schools across the 757. In Salem and Lansdowne and Bayside and IC Norcom's alma mater. And I know he'll probably slap me upside the head for saying this later, but quit that posture, Coach Jackson. One of my favorites to cover over the years. His teams have always played hard and aggressive for him, and he gets a lot out of his kids, the most out of his kids, I believe. But he pushed Manchester. His team, his young pups pushed Manchester. And I think Thomas Dale's defense is playing a little bit better right now than Manchester. I think Manchester has more ways to put up points, and they have more explosive, take it to the house options on offense. But if Thomas Dale makes this a grinded out game, and it's tight late, and I know Manchester's been knocking them out of the playoffs for years now, that's more of a toss-up than I would have thought 2 weeks ago. I have to give that game a closer look. Manchester might have a couple guys dinged up, too. I'm wondering about that because they gave them a little more than I thought they would to Lansdowne at 28. They're still scoring 38, and they responded from that angle compared to what they had last week against Huguenot. And then Oscar Smith, LC Bird. Bird, nice win for Bird, but I don't think they have the personnel, the components to give Oscar Smith a go in this one. I think we're looking at, and I'll be honest with you, I think the gap is back to where I thought it might, be to where Smith gets out of that region. So there you have it. That is the set up the brackets for all your regions. And again, if you're watching on IG, you have to go back on the Cova Sports TV and see the brackets. But we put out links. You can find them on X or Twitter and VirginiaPreps.com. We got those for you. And we'll give you more analysis and thoughts coming up on 757 Sports Talk, where I think we're going to go 9 to 11 in order for me to get to Darling Stadium in time and for Coach Young, my counterpart, to begin his basketball practice at Smithfield without his football guys because they won. He has to wait another week to get his football guys. And he will complain for 25 minutes on Saturday's show about that because all he cares about is his basketball guys. And it's all about him. So he'll do that. In case you're out there wondering and watching, he will do that for 25 minutes. Matter of fact, I might just walk out of the room while he does that, and I'll come back when he's done. But before we end this particular Hats Hits IG Live special, as I promised, my one game to watch, if I got to pick one college football game and one NFL game, I think you know where I'm going with the NFL game too, by the way. The one college football game that I like most for Saturday, Alabama-Oklahoma was really good. It's really good, Oklahoma's defense, to see if Ty Simpson will light them up and if OU decides to go man or zone in terms of coverage. That's really good. But it's going to be my runner-up to the pick, the ultimate pick, and that's Texas and Georgia. Texas and Georgia, SEC championship last year. Georgia has become like the new Alabama to me, to where they get down and then they get revved up in the second half. This is Alabama under Nick Saban towards the end. Kirby Smart, one of his disciples. And then they get you on the edge of your seat. And they had that game a couple weeks ago with Florida where that was the case, where their running game broke off a couple of big plays to get it done. And I don't know. I got a funny feeling Texas is going to take this one. I know, in Georgia, I got a funny feeling. I just do. Arch Manning seems to have figured things out. Their offense is starting to click a little better. And by the way, if they don't take this game, then they pretty much have to beat Texas A&M to have any hope whatsoever of being in the playoff. So this is a monster game. Georgia at 2 losses. Well, they have to play Georgia Tech still. And should they beat Georgia Tech decisively, and Georgia Tech's in the ACC conversation, that could still keep Georgia right there in the mix. So that's the one game. I know Oklahoma, Bama's good, but that's the one game. NFL, no, it's not Commanders Dolphins. I won't wake up to see that game. Actually, I got to go do an ODU women's basketball game at William & Mary, so I will be up. I won't be watching that game. Bucks and Bills is not bad. But it's Seahawks Rams. I know Lions Eagles is really good on Sunday Night Football, but I'm going to go Seahawks Rams. I think the Lions might win that game by 7-10 on the Eagles in Philly. That surprises people to hear probably, but Matthew Stafford. Not only does he have a great first name, but Matthew Stafford, the last 6 weeks, go check out his numbers. He has been flawless. But that Seattle defense, it's not the Legion of Boom defense, but it has been bringing it lately. So I want to see if Seattle's defense can do anything to slow Matthew Stafford down. And Sam Darnold's been playing at a high level too. I think that Rams-Seahawks game, that is going to might be the 2 best playing teams in the NFL right now in terms of level of play. That's a little bit like the Seattle-San Francisco from several years back when they were jockeying to hosting the NFC Championship game and go to the Super Bowl. That's going to be a great game. coming up on Sunday. So there you have it. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Hats Hits. We've been going longer these lately. And I think this might be our last one for the Friday into Saturday. We'll do some more, though, I'm sure, at some point. For tuning in on Cova Sports TV. So we are out, and we'll catch you next time. Adios, amigos. Bon voyage. Later, Gators.